The police. They protect us, they serve us, and they provide us with an endless source of TV show one-liners.
Rock, paper, scissors, gun.
Well, I'm no Serena Williams, but I know one thing. It's all in the wrist.
Who'd want to cut your penis off?
Take a number.
OK, now, you laugh, but admit it, you want to watch the rest of that episode right now. Now, look, public trust in the police is one of the most vital elements in a civilised society. But for many Americans, that trust has been undermined by a procedure called civil forfeiture. Now, I know it sounds like a Gwyneth Paltrow euphemism for divorce, but incredibly, it's actually even worse than that.
Civil asset forfeiture is really a mechanism by which the state and federal government can seize people's property without having to convict them of a crime. Most people can't afford to hire a lawyer to challenge it. It's really legalized robbery by law enforcement.
And think about it, that is a tough crime to report to the police. Give me a description of what the guy looked like. Well, to be honest, he looked a lot like the guy currently asking me what the guy looked like. And if you think this sounds bad, just wait until you see how it looks. Because the Washington Post recently published a major investigation featuring stories like that of this man, who was driving from Michigan to San Francisco with $2,400 in cash that his dad had lent him to start a new job, when he was pulled over in Nevada.
I gave him my license and registration, and then as he was looking at that information, he asked me how much money I was traveling with.
Lee told him about the money his dad gave him, which he kept in the trunk.
He told me to turn on my air vents on high and roll up my windows and get out of the car because he was going to run a canine around it.
Dove didn't find drugs, but he did find the $2,400.
He said, no, I'm going to keep the money because I've concluded through my investigation here that you are traveling from Michigan to California to purchase drugs.
Wow. I mean, there is so much wrong there, including the fact that any policeman who genuinely believes you need to travel from Michigan to California to purchase drugs needs to be introduced to the concept of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. OK? It's right there. And the problem is, stories like that are surprisingly common. In fact, since 9/11, under just one programme, police have taken $2.5 billion in the course of over 61,000 seizures of cash alone from people who, and this is the mind-blowing part, were not charged with a crime. That is the sort of police behaviour that we laugh at other countries for, along with their accents and silly hats. The way civil forfeiture generally works is that if the police believe they have a preponderance of the evidence that suggests your property was or could be used in a crime, they may confiscate it. And it gets even weirder.
Many folks are unfamiliar with the idea of civil forfeiture, which is actually a case brought directly against a piece of property where you don't need to be proven guilty of a crime for your goods to be taken away.
Exactly. You don't need to be charged with a crime because it's not you that's on trial, it's your stuff. That's why these cases have historically had eye-catching names, such as, and all of these are real, United States versus $8,850 in US currency, United States versus an article consisting of 50,000 cardboard boxes, more or less, each containing one pair of clacker balls, and United States versus approximately 64,695 pounds of shark fins, which must have been an amazing court case. And do you see those shark fins in the room right now? Yes! There they are! There they are! Let the record show the witnesses pointed at roughly 65,000 pounds of shark fins. Guilty, guilty. And it's also worth noting that your possessions generally have fewer protections under the law than you do.
Under civil forfeiture laws, your property is guilty until you prove it innocent.
How can that be possible? At this point, I'm surprised objects don't have their own civil rights leader, like Martin Scooter King or Harvey Carton of Milk. Now, to be fair, civil forfeiture laws have had some positive consequences. They've crippled powerful drug traffic organisations, thwarted criminals and returned billions of dollars to victims. The problem is that many police departments are allowed to keep most or all of the money they seize. And knowing that starts to make you wonder about the motivations of these kinds of questions.
Is there any large amounts of cash in the vehicle?
Are there any large sums of money over $5,000 in cash in the vehicle?
How much money you got?
Any large amounts of U.S. currency or not?
I'll take whatever cash you got in there, and is that a Slurpee in the cup holder? What flavour? Grape? Never mind. Do you know what? I will take it. I'll take it. The question, do you have cash in the vehicle, is surprisingly common in traffic stops, and the police are prepared to overcome any language barrier to ask it.
¿Tiene mucho dinero en su truck y trailer?
Let's be clear. He just said, "Tiene mucho dinero in su trucky trailer," which sounds like an alien's first attempt to communicate with humans after crash landing in a Taco Bell. In fact, let's all just pause for a moment to enjoy that sentence, because every single word of it is funny. First, tenny, pronounced incorrectly. Mucho, one of the few words he knows in Spanish. Mucho, repeated word. De Niro, a famed actor. In, a rapid shift to English. Su, rapid shift back to Spanish. Trucky trailer. Now, it's magnificent. That is magnificent. It's a work of art. Now this happened in Tennessee, a state where local law enforcement authorities are allowed to keep as much as 100% of the proceeds from civil forfeitures. A local news investigation found multiple troubling cases of people having money seized, such as George Reeby, who had $20,000 seized after he was stopped for speeding. The police officer argued it was drug money, despite the fact that Reeby had a pretty good explanation.
I told them I had active bids on eBay that I was trying to buy a vehicle, and they just didn't want to hear it.
In fact, Reeby had proof on his computer, but the Monterey officer drew up a damning affidavit citing his own training that common people do not carry this much U.S. currency.
And did he tell you that he was trying to buy a car?
He did.
But you did not include that in your report.
If it's not in there, I didn't put it in there.
So why would you leave that out?
I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know? I expect a better answer from a police officer than a 4-year-old who just spilled grape juice on the couch. What happened to your drink? I don't know. If it's not in my glass, it's not in my glass. I don't know. I don't know. And look, it's not always just a roadside stop. In 2008, police raided the Contemporary Art Institute of Detroit during its Funk Night because it didn't have a liquor license, seizing 44 cars under the argument that simply driving vehicles to the location of an unlawful sale of alcohol was sufficient to seize a car. Which means you may as well seize any car driven by any teenager on prom night, because they are all going to Chad's place. Chad's got the hookup. We actually managed to get the security video of that Detroit raid, and you can see the police burst in and arrest people with the disco lights still swirling in the single funkiest shakedown in human history. They each had to pay $900 to get their cars out of the impound, with the exception of the one person whose car was actually stolen from the lot to which it had been towed. Which seems like the sort of thing the police should be investigating if they weren't too busy raiding art gallery funk nights. And at this point, you may be thinking, well, sure, the police departments are getting a lot of money from seizing stuff, but I'm sure there are limitations on how they can spend it. Well, allow me to take you to a 2012 Columbia, Missouri Citizen Police Review Board hearing.
How do you decide forfeiture funds?
You know, it's usually based on a need. Well, I'll take that back.
Discretion, though, I'd imagine you sign off on.
Yeah, there's some limitations on it. You know, it's actually there's not really on the forfeiture stuff.
Actually, there's basically no limitations at all. Come to think of it, we're essentially gods. We're gods. We're like the anti-Spider-Man. Great power, no responsibility. I can't believe this hasn't come up before. And look, his honesty was not over.
We just usually base it on something that would be nice to have, that we can't get in the budget, for instance. So, you know, we try not to use it for things that we need to depend on, you know, because we need to go ahead and have those purchased. But it's kind of like pennies from heaven, you know, it gets you a toy or something that you need, is the way we typically look at it.
That's right. They buy toys with pennies from heaven. Well, they should know those pennies may not be falling from heaven so much as from the pockets of the people they're holding upside down and shaking. And in terms of what kind of toys police departments buy, that really depends. For instance, in Massachusetts, one DA's office used forfeiture money to buy their own Zamboni. Even though, auditors noted, we could not determine where this machine was located or the law enforcement purpose it serves. Although that last one is obvious. Just think about it. Because if you are robbing a bank and the police pull up in a Zamboni, you're going to give yourself up just out of sheer curiosity. And in Texas, one DA's office had an even more imaginative idea. And I'll let a concerned citizen at a public hearing tell you all about it.
With or without a law degree, everyone here knows that purchases of kegs of beer, margarita machines, and bottles of Crown Royal for office parties, as was done in Montgomery County, don't qualify as expenses for official purposes.
That's true. In Texas, they bought a margarita machine. They were literally using this money as their own personal slush fund. They were literally... It's perfect. The analogy is perfect. And look, if the police need money for equipment, we should clearly be giving it to them. And if they need money for margarita machines, they should be f***ing paying for that themselves. But these civil forfeiture laws have warped law enforcement priorities and perception, and nowhere is that more clear than Philadelphia.
Philadelphia officials over a 10-year period have seized more than 1,000 houses, about 3,300 vehicles, and $44 million in cash and civil forfeitures.
Holy shit. Usually when someone describes something taking 3,000 vehicles and 1,000 houses, they're talking about a fucking hurricane. Now, one of those houses belongs to the Soravelis family, and the reason for that seizure seems a little harsh from the outside.
Police arrested their 22-year-old son Yanni on drug charges, $40 worth of heroin, and claim he was selling drugs out of the home. Police and prosecutors came armed with a lawsuit against the house itself.
Exactly, because remember, the parents aren't on trial, the house is, which is clearly ridiculous. The only drug-containing house that needs a lawsuit against it is this one. You're on the edge. You're on the edge, house. You're this close. You're this close to losing your job. You're good, damn it. You're good, house. You're close, house. You're close. But you're good. But you're so close. But you're so good, house. And once their house was seized, the Soravelises got to experience the final problem with civil forfeiture. Recourse can be incredibly difficult.
Here in Philadelphia, if you have your property taken, you can come here to City Hall and go to courtroom 478 and try to get it back. Problem is, the people that are taking the belongings are also the ones calling the shots inside the courtroom.
The Soravelises showed up to courtroom 478 ready to plead their case to a judge. Instead, they say they faced a prosecutor from the DA's office.
That's right. Their first step in challenging the police seizing their property was in a courtroom without a judge hearing their case. How can you even still call that a courtroom? If you take all the doctors out of a hospital and replace them with otters, that's no longer a hospital. It's better, it's much better, but it's not a hospital. I don't know what, I love it, but it's not a hospital. In fact, recourse is so difficult that most people who've lost stuff to civil forfeiture just choose to walk away rather than fight. So at this point, it should seem obvious that the bad may be starting to outweigh the good with civil forfeiture laws. So we've really got two choices. We can take a hard look at reforming them, or, at the very least, we need to reform our network cop dramas to make them a lot more representative of what is actually happening.
Coming soon, Law and Order, Civil Asset Forfeiture Unit. Get ready to go inside the thrilling world of civil forfeiture.
Knock, knock!
Freeze, police!
Hands on the ground, get off the sofa.
Keep them where we can see them.
You're under arrest.
What for? You guys got nothing on me.
Not you. The sofa.
Coming this fall. A procedural about law enforcement's shadiest procedure.
Rough night, huh? Well, it's about to get a lot rougher. What's $2,500 in cash doing hanging out in somebody's glove box, huh? Answer me.
cops are determined, and they won't stop until they get everything. Every last thing.
You're dirty, right? Drug deal, guns, what is it? I can't help you if you don't talk to me.
I'm gonna beat the shit out of you.
Detective Forfeiture, Civil Forfeiture Unit.
Brace yourself for hard-pounding takedowns.
Resisting arrest? Send in backup. Send in backup.
The defendants are inanimate, but the drama is anything but.
Frisk him.
There's a pile of silver dollars next door that says you did it. You will lose, and I will win.
Stay on the streets too long, the city leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
Hey, I know what'll get it out.
Law and Order, Civil Asset Forfeiture Unit.
I'm gonna crumple you up till you look like a cat's asshole.
Out there that don't know about this, what is civil forfeiture? Was sworn in today as our next Attorney General. Will he put a stop to government abuse of private property rights? Institute for Justice Texas Managing Attorney Matt Miller joins us. So, Matt, for folks out there that don't know about this, what is civil forfeiture and why is it such a big problem in the country today?
Well, civil forfeiture is the power of government to take property without charging or convicting you of a crime. And it contrasts with criminal forfeiture, under which you've been convicted of a crime, and then the government can seize and forfeit your property because it was used in conjunction with that crime. Under civil forfeiture, you don't have to have charges or a conviction, and that's a problem for private property rights.
Now, we've editorialized about this for viewers who are curious. You can go read our editorial, Jeff Sessions and Civil Forfeiture. But, Matt, I asked you on the show today because President Trump indicated in a kind of offhand remark this week that he, too, like Jeff Sessions, does not support civil forfeiture reform. Should we be concerned, or is it just, again, a kind of offhanded remark by the president?
Well, it certainly seemed like an offhand remark. And if President Trump understood the extent to which civil forfeiture is used and abused in this country, we believe he would support reform.
And you're involved currently in a case in your state. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we're involved in Texas. We had a case in Texas that ended ended at the Texas Supreme Court. We were not able to achieve reform with that case, but there are currently 15 bills in the Texas legislature that would reform civil asset forfeiture, including a bill in the Senate and its companion in the House that would require a criminal conviction before any forfeiture could occur.
So you guys are basically standing up for private property rights here. You don't want government seizing property if you haven't been convicted of a crime. But who's on the other side, Matt? Is it, for instance, law enforcement that gets the proceeds of these property sales?
It's law enforcement and it's prosecutors. There was a recent poll in Texas that shows that 88% of Texans support civil forfeiture reform. Law enforcement says that they need forfeiture in order to go after criminals and after the proceeds of criminal activity. But none of the reform measures that are currently on the table in Texas would prevent them from doing that. They could go after anybody who is convicted of a crime and seize their assets, and they could go after any contraband in the state. None of these proposals change that, but they all benefit private property owners by preventing them from having their property seized and forfeited without that conviction.
Look, at the end of the day, do we really need a Jeff Sessions or a President Trump to address this problem? Can't Congress just pass a law and help the president understand why he needs to sign it? Pass a bill.
Well, Congress can certainly reform forfeiture on the federal level, and we've been working with them to do that. But individual states also need to reform it on the state level, which is what Texas is trying to do so that it can join the other 19 states plus the District of Columbia that have already passed forfeiture reform in the past 3 years.
Well, we're going to keep a close eye on it. We appreciate your time today. The Institute for Justice's Matt Miller. Thanks for joining the show. We've seen
SCOTA says states have no right to money taken based on overturned convictions. If making people prove their innocence to get their property back violates due process, what about civil forfeiture? Jacob Solom, April 21, 2017, 10:15 a.m. This week the Supreme Court ruled that Colorado has no right to keep fines, fees, court costs, and restitution it extracts from criminal defendants whose convictions are later reversed. By forcing people to prove their innocence before they can get back property that is rightly theirs, the court said, Colorado has been violating the 14th Amendment's guarantee of due process. The Institute for Justice, which filed a brief in the case emphasizing that the presumption of innocence is an essential aspect of due process, makes a compelling argument that civil asset forfeiture routinely violates that principle. The court's decision in Nelson v. Colorado, which was joined by 7 justices, Clarence Thomas dissented, and Neil Gorsuch joined the court too recently to participate, came in response to challenges by Shannon Nelson and Lewis Madden, who tried to get back money the state took from them based on convictions that were overturned. Nelson, who in 2006 was convicted of 2 felonies and 3 misdemeanors based on allegations that she had abused her 4 children, was sentenced to 20 years in prison and ordered to pay $8,193 in court costs, fees, and restitution, $702 of which was taken from her inmate account before she won a new trial and was acquitted. Madden, who in 2005 was convicted of 2 felonies based on allegations that he had patronized an underage prostitute, received an indeterminate prison sentence and was ordered to pay $4,413 in costs, fees, and restitution, $1,978 of which was collected before his convictions were reversed on appeal and the state decided not to prosecute him again. Nelson and Madden got a sympathetic hearing at the Colorado Court of Appeals, which concluded that they had a right to refunds. But the Colorado Supreme Court disagreed, saying they could get their money back only if they followed the process prescribed by Colorado's Compensation for Certain Exonerated Persons statute, aka the Exoneration Act. That law requires exonerated defendants seeking compensation to file a lawsuit and prove their innocence by clear and convincing evidence. That procedure is prohibitively expensive for people seeking the return of modest sums, and it is no help at all for people convicted of misdemeanors, which are not covered by the law. More fundamentally, the U.S. Supreme Court says in an opinion by Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the Exoneration Act is inappropriate for people who are seeking not compensation for wrongful convictions but the return of money the state took based on legal determinations that are no longer valid. Colorado may not retain funds taken from Nelson and Madden solely because of their now invalidated convictions, for Colorado may not presume a person, adjudged guilty of no crime, nonetheless guilty enough for monetary exactions, Ginsburg writes. To get their money back, defendants should not be saddled with any proof burden. Instead, they are entitled to be presumed innocent. That was true before Nelson and Madden were tried, Ginsburg observes, and it is true again now that their convictions have been nullified. The parallels with civil asset forfeiture are pretty clear. In both cases, the government takes someone's property based on allegations of criminal activity, and in both cases the owners are forced to prove their innocence if they want to get their property back. Nelson v. Colorado upholds the fundamental principle that Americans are entitled to be presumed innocent until proven otherwise, says Institute for Justice attorney Robert Everett Johnson. The court expressly rejected Colorado's argument that the presumption of innocence applies only at criminal trials, explaining that the government may not presume a person, adjudged guilty of no crime, nonetheless guilty enough for monetary exactions. Unfortunately, civil forfeiture laws turn the presumption of innocence on its head. Using civil forfeiture, law enforcement seizes billions of dollars in cash and other property every year based only on suspicion of a crime. Property owners are then required to prove their own innocence to get that property back. Civil forfeiture is actually worse than the financial losses suffered by Nelson and Madden, because at least in their cases the government initially had to prove their guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Since civil forfeiture is notionally an action against the property rather than the person to whom it belongs, The government need not charge the owner with a crime, let alone convict him.
Hey Charlotte County, this is Charlotte County Cop Watch, and I wanted to explain what fair use is. You can use pieces of news articles if you're doing it for news reporting, you have commentary, and you're doing it for education purposes. So that's what fair use is, as you can see right here. Another reason why I wanted to make this video is to let you know I have just joined with Patreon. A nice thing with Patreon, I make no money on YouTube. They took the money away years ago, and so this is another way to give, and it's a nice thing too because you can give monthly. You can give $1, $5, $10, whatever. I do 4 to 5 hours a day on trying to wake the sheeple up on how corrupt it is and different ways that you can fight the corruption. So Patreon is a way that you can do it, and then of course the old way is still there. Donate to Sheriff County Cop Watch with PayPal or credit card. So keep that in mind. 4 to 5 hours a day. I make no money, but the corruption happened to me and I'm sick of it, so I'm trying to wake people up. But my wife would love it if if we could get some help out there. There's 47,000 subscribers. Just think if each one of you subscribers just gave let's say actually yes, $1 a month. 47,000 subscribers gave $1 a month. That would be awesome. That's not going to happen. But anyways, that would be great if it did happen. But do the math in your head. Just think about it. Like I said, 4 to 5 hours a day. I get no money from YouTube. YouTube has gone nuts. You can't do anything anymore. They're taking the money away everywhere. So these are a couple different ways that you can still help out with all this time that I put in. And as you know, I'm in a special situation where, at least I can do it. 4 to 5 hours a day. We have a cleaning company during the day. That's what allows me to do this, and we're debt free. So this is my hobby. I don't go fishing and all that other crap. I try to save the world. So help me out to make the wife happy, man. In fact, if you guys did give $1 a day, and there was 47,000 of you, and you did it, and each of you gave $1, and that was every month, oh my God, yes, I could quit. I could start suing them. Another idea too that we have is if I got some funds, we could actually contact everyone that has been ticketed and or arrested and put in jail and start sending them postcards to let them know we're here, and to see if everything went all right, and if it didn't, find out their story. So we could even do more investigations and more lawsuits. Lawsuits take money. So just think about that. 47,000 of you so far right now. $1 a day. $1 a month on Patreon, or $5 a month Patreon, 10, 20, whatever. Just do the math in your head, help out. This is a lot of work every single day. Thanks.